Welcome to our second of this year's collaborations with Riot Games for Latin America. If you want to catch these guides in Spanish, then be sure to check out their channel here. League is a game of decisions. Decision making is widely agreed among the best players in the game to be the most important skill to master in order to climb and carry games, even more important than having good mechanics. The first 5 minutes of every game you play as a jungler is when you have by far the most impact on the outcome of the game, which is all centered around the choices you make. Before you even load into game, you have to think about a game plan, which lanes you should impact, what camps you should clear, and then changing your plan based on the information that you gather in the meantime. For example, imagine a low elo jungler starting bot side, as they always do for the better leash, which just leaves him pathing top toward a Nasus who won't do anything to help with a gank. Meanwhile, the other jungler, knowing that a worse leash won't matter, starts top to path toward bottom. That way, he can impact the highly volatile bot lane as quickly as possible to get them rolling. One jungler has made a correct decision and will likely be rewarded for it, while the other will probably have no impact on the early game. In this guide, we're going to teach you how to be the smart jungler who is always getting things done and not wasting his time as we train you to always make the best decisions as a jungler. Let's get started. To make proper choices as a jungler, there are 3 vital skills that you need to be aware of to increase your chances of success substantially: matchup knowledge, info gathering, and wave control knowledge. We'll be reviewing a few games, but for the first one, we'll be heavily quizzing you on these topics to help you learn in real time how a challenger jungler would approach the first few minutes to have a successful early game. For our first game, we have a Hecarim jungle playing against a Kha'Zix. Here are the drafts for both teams. Take a moment to think to yourself, would you start your clear from top or bot side as the Hecarim? If you said bot side, you would be correct, since at the end of your clear you want to be in a position to impact the map. By starting bot, Hecarim could impact mid or top lane, which are both melee matchups. Melee matchups are predictably hostile, since both champions must get close to each other in order to last hit, whereas Hecarim's bot lane is Seraphine and Ezreal versus a Xayah Rakan. With their range advantage, they'll likely be pushing in the wave all the time, which would make finding ganks down there much less likely than in top and mid. Hecarim's opening route was decided simply from matchup knowledge, which is about having at least a vague idea of how lanes will interact, and that will allow you to make the best decision possible, and we'll cover more examples as we go on. Anyway, Hecarim starts bot, clearing blue, Gromp, wolves, and then raptors. During raptors, Hecarim's Zed dies to the enemy Echo. Knowing that that mid matchup would have been volatile, do you think Hecarim should have been there to help his Zed? That's a question most junglers ask themselves when their laners die while they were nearby clearing a camp. The answer in this case for Hecarim is no. While he could predict the matchup would be volatile, if he had skilled his E and tried to gank mid, he would be relying on his Zed to follow up during a neutral lane state and for the Echo to commit to a fight before landing the gank. Deviating from your clear as a farming jungle for an uncertain play he has no control over could easily lose him the early game, especially if the enemy Kha'Zix were around to counter gank. However, if Hecarim was instead an early ganking jungler like Elise, Rek'Sai, or Jarvan, then yes, seeing the heavy action in mid could have warranted immediately pathing over there upon hitting level 3. Not because Zed is going to suddenly become more competent when you're playing those champions, but rather because you have more agency to get a kill on your own as a powerful early jungler. With that in mind, Hecarim moves on to red after raptors, then pans his camera over to the mid lane. As a jungler, it's essential to actively move your camera onto nearby lanes to gather information, which is the second skill required to make the correct choices: information gathering. By scouting Kha'Zix mid here with his camera, Hecarim can try to determine where Kha'Zix will go next. Given the angle Kha'Zix is approaching the lane and that he has double buffs, Hecarim knows he did a fast clear from top to bot, skipping a top camp along the way. Unfortunately for him, this means Kha'Zix could now path top or bot, since he has 1 camp top and 2 camps bot. While it's more likely that he'll go bot, he can't know for sure. Importantly, Hecarim also scouts the Singed going toward at the same time. Now he knows that if he paths into the river area from top Tribrush, he will be seen by the enemy. After finishing red buff, Hecarim once again gathers information by panning his camera topside. As we pause here, what information do you think he just gathered?
With the third skill, Wave Control Knowledge, Hecarim knows that the Gragas' blue wave is slow pushing into the Singed, so he can kill Krugs as a stalling move while he waits for the wave to build and crash for a dive. So Hecarim does Krugs, walks into River, and waits for the wave to crash before successfully diving the enemy Singed. The challenger Hecarim has successfully full cleared and destroyed the enemy top laner right after by utilizing the 3 skills required to make the best choices possible to take over the early game as a jungler. You're probably wondering things like, well, what if the enemy jungler was there to counter gank? What if Hecarim's top laner was losing? This all seems too easy, right? So first, we want to address the concern of counter ganks when going for a dive like this. Hecarim knew that Kha'Zix could be topside as he pathed through the river. We see that Ka took the scuttle very recently, so the risk of him being around is actually quite high. Here's why it doesn't matter though. Since Gragas is crashing a massive wave into Singed Tower, if Hecarim and Ka encounter each other, Gragas is free to move and help out in the skirmish, whereas Singed will be stuck under his tower farming. And if Singed moves over to fight the 2v2, then if Gragas and Hecarim just disengage, they win out the trade because Singed will be losing a ton of farm to the tower during that time. But what if Hecarim's top laner was losing? So he purposely pathed from his passive bot side toward a volatile melee matchup, which increases the odds of him having an impact at the end of his clear. If Singed was winning, he'd likely be overextended and Hecarim could just easily gank him to score a kill without having to dive. This scenario would also be where information gathering would come in clutch. Knowing where Kha'Zix is would be crucial in a situation like this. If you know that he's bot side, then you can just gank as usual. But if you're either unaware of his location or know that he's top, you can call off the gank altogether. Instead, you look to recall and path bot, repeating the 3 skill process and looking for other better opportunities to impact the game. Anyway, with Gragas' TP advantage, he makes a play bot with the Hecarim, and they easily snowball the early game in less than 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and jump into some more examples of early game decision making. Here we have an Elise who's starting topside and pathing bot. She didn't want to path bot to top because the enemy top laner is Shaco, who is probably one of the most difficult champions to gank. Bot side, however, she has a Xayah Rakan against a Morgana Kai'Sa. Typically, when you have a melee support against a ranged support, the ranged support lane will push. So by the time Elise paths bot, she can expect them to be pushed and vulnerable to a gank. So with matchup knowledge determining what path Elise will take, let's see what happens. She clears red buff, then the enemy Kayn tries to cheese her but loses the smite fight. Elise walks it off with a thumbs up and heads off to clear blue into Gromp. While clearing Gromp, she pans her camera to the bot lane. The matchup didn't go to plan and her Xayah Rakan are actually the ones pushing, which we'll talk about more in a moment. With this information in mind though, what would you do next as the Elise? So because Elise got cheesed by the Kayn previously, she's thinking about what Kayn would do next and how she can gain an advantage. If Kayn paths to her Krugs after the cheese, it would be wildly inefficient to path all the way there for a single camp, so it's more likely that he would go back to his own jungle to clear as he's a farming jungler. Using this information, Elise decides to invade the Kayn for 2 reasons. Number 1, if Kayn is fully clearing his blue side, she can 3-camp him just by taking his red before he gets there. Number 2, if Kayn is rushing the red to make sure Elise can't take it, she'll crush him in a 1v1 since she's stronger early. Keep in mind though, that this will only be possible since she knows her bot lane has prio. Let's see what happens. She ends up finding Kayn at Krugs and goes for the 1v1, while constantly checking up on how her bot lane is doing. If they lost prio, she would immediately disengage. But since they were winning, she's able to keep fighting and easily finish off the Kayn. After, they also set up an easy dive, totally taking over the early game once again by utilizing all 3 skills of decision making. Of course, there's an obvious concern in most people's mind watching this. Elise got lucky that her bot lane was randomly winning, right? Yes, she did, but that wasn't her plan to begin with anyway. Remember that she wanted her bot lane to get pushed in so that she could gank the pushing enemy bot. If they were losing, she would have just ganked them as planned, but this is the difference between high and low elo junglers. They use the information at hand to adapt their decision making to come out ahead regardless of what's going on the map. And with that, let's jump into our final game of today's guide. In this game, our challenger jungler is playing Graves. He starts bot side and paths to top. Why? Because he has a Seraphine Senna, 2 ranged champions who will easily push in an Alistar Jinx lane. Also, topside is GP versus Aurelia, who has Ignite, so it's certainly volatile and likely to be impacted with a gank. As he's finishing blue, he notices that he has the teammates he's always been dreaming of having in solo queue, and they randomly scout out and pincer the enemy's Skarner, securing a double kill that in itself essentially stomps the early game without Graves doing a whole lot besides showing up. Now, this is certainly a rare scenario to encounter, and the beauty of League of Legends is that no two games are ever the same. It's by using the 3 skills to make the best choices possible that our jungler is able to use this blessing to completely demolish the early game. So, in this luxurious position, Graves takes things to the next level and eliminates Aurelia from the game by constantly gathering information and using his wave control knowledge. After stealing red, he paths toward Krugs, but is constantly checking the state of top lane and immediately knows when a fight is breaking out, so he abandons the Krugs and heads over to help Gangplank. Once GP is safe, Graves identifies the blue wave is crashing into the enemy tower as the red wave arrives. This means that when the next red wave arrives, it'll build up and push into GP. Aurelia doesn't want this to happen while recalling, so she wants to push into the enemy tower before resetting. This is all going to take time to come to fruition, so as a stalling move, Graves goes back to killing Krugs and then the topside Scuttle Crab. By the time both of these camps are taken, he repeat ganks the Aurelia, securing GP with a freeze the Aurelia was unable to deny, and she has to take a bad recall, falling further behind. What do you think the Graves should do now? Well, the best thing that he can do right now is to recall and path to his top side once again. Since he has 2 remaining camps there, it's still efficient, and he can once again gank the Aurelia, who will be forced to move into a pushed lane, rewarding Graves with an easy kill and essentially deletes Aurelia from the game as she's now way too far behind. Alright everyone, hopefully after this guide you're able to appreciate the importance of decision making a little more and feel confident in trying to make challenger level choices in your games. Remember, even if you're not able to always make the perfect decision like the jungler featured in today's guide, just actively using the 3 skills and thinking about your pathing in a logical way will significantly improve your impact in the early game as a jungler in your solo queue games.
By the way, you should know where these videos come from. Our hyper improvement platform, SkillCapped, is by far the best place to be if you want to actually improve at League of Legends. You can input your rank before signing up to see where we think you'll climb to. If you don't reach that rank while actively using SkillCapped, you can claim a full refund. That's like a gym membership guaranteeing that you'll get ripped. We offer this because our service really does work, and if it doesn't, then you shouldn't pay for it. So be sure to check us out after this. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.